Good day. It is August of 2020. This hasn't been the best year, but it is nearing its completion. As I said back in 2019, the only way to get out of the bad and get to the good is to keep slogging. You take it each day at a time. You make it through one day, you make it through a week, you make it through a month, and eventually the bad days will be over. You've got to ensure that you keep fighting to make the bad days over. You can't just wait for something to happen. Even if it's little things, you have to keep trying to improve the lot in which you are in. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not, but don't just sit there waiting for something to happen. Because generally in life, you have to make the good things happen. You have to make the things change. This gets into the first of two topics I want to discuss at the first part of this particular video. Thing the first, leave yourself open to good things happening. This happens so often to so many people that it's really quite depressing, where people will be completely closed off from anything good ever happening. Now, you might not even have to have bad things happen to you personally, you just have to hear about them happening to others to potentially close yourself off from good things happening. The most common one I usually see are relationships. People really hate the idea of the relationship these days, or at least that's what it seems like to me. For me, despite having heard a lot of negative things about relationships growing up, I always wanted one. And in the few that I've had, they've generally been good until they ended. But the fact is, even now in 2020, after a few negative experiences with relationships, I still want one. I still find it to be the most enriching experience one can actually have. The sharing of your life with someone else is something that, well, nothing can really even approach. Being able to introduce someone to a book or a game or just to be able to sit and talk to someone about philosophical concepts is something that really can't be equaled in any other way. It really transcends friendship and becomes something even more, I can't think of the word at the moment. My brain is tired. Becomes even more fulfilling. That's not the exact word, but it works well enough. But if you basically close yourself off to all of that, you miss out on one of the great aspects of life. What's funny, though, is I have seen people get into relationships for the first time, and they're like, "You were so right, John, I couldn't believe it." It's like, yep, I knew it. Looks like I was right. So yeah, don't close yourself off. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be relationships. It can be life in general. If you go around believing that life sucks, well, guess what? Life is probably gonna suck. You have to have a positive mindset in order to survive the many trials and tribulations of life itself. Life can be good and life can be bad. Life can be very difficult. But you have to keep fighting to make it good. You have to keep fighting to make it not quite as difficult. It really relies upon you to make the fate that you want. There's no fate but what we make, man, unless shitty writers are writing. But let's ignore that. So yeah, just leave yourself open to being happy. Because if you don't, you'll never be happy. And this gets into another thing that kind of goes into the concept of being happy. So often these days, and any day really, we often are told by media, or possibly even tell ourselves, that our lives are meaningless, that someone else is better than us for whatever reason, or someone else can do these things that we can't do. That is an entirely self-defeating mindset. There's always going to be someone out there that can do something better than you, or potentially they just do it differently and it looks better. And sometimes you don't even really want to be as good as someone else. Case in point, firearms. Firearms are by far my favorite hobby of all time. Really, it's video creation is right up there. It's a close second to firearms, but firearms, I absolutely love them. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? I'm not as good as Jerry Miculek. I'm never going to be as good as Jerry Miculek. And for those who don't know who Jerry Miculek even is, he is one of the top tier shooters of all time. He is like the biggest, baddest shooter there ever was. Case in point, his trigger finger is so well trained, so well honed, that he can potentially shoot faster than a fully automatic firearm. There are a lot of videos of him shooting, even Garand's. You can guess that both of those rifles are going to be in the next review. He can shoot Garand's like almost as fast as a full auto. It's ridiculous. Accurately, no less. And there's one particular video, and I'm not going to be picking this thing up because I don't have one, of him shooting like 650 caliber rounds in like a second. It's a ridiculous thing. I'm never going to be as good as him, and to be perfectly frank, I don't want to be as good as him. Simply because, well, he devotes his entire life to shooting. That's what he does. One of his words of wisdom is, be the first at the range and the last to leave. For me, I have more things I want to do than just go to the range and shoot all the time. I would go to the range and I would shoot, but I have all the other things I want to do too. But it's very easy to think that, oh, I'll never be as good as Jerry Mikulek, but do I even want to be as good as Jerry Mikulek? And the answer is no. I want to be as good as GeneralLotz, and I'm happy to be as good as GeneralLotz. You should always want to improve yourself, but you shouldn't want to improve yourself because you want to be as good as somebody else. It also applies to comparing yourself to other people. Really, that is another self-defeating mindset. Is, say, Elon Musk better than me? Many people would say yes, but how? Why? And in what way would that affect my life? And this is a very important thing. Just because someone is said to be better than someone else, how does that affect your life? Does that change anything in your day-to-day living? Does that make you feel better or worse that you're not as good as someone? Once again, would I want to have the life that Elon Musk has? Not really. He doesn't live the life I want to live, so is he better? He just does something different from me. Yes, he has more money, but does money really equate happiness? Does that equal happiness in some way? For some people it does. For me it does not. Having enough money makes me happy, but my entire pursuit of life is not money. And that's where you got to look at it. What constitutes better? What constitutes more important? What constitutes you're not as good as? Instead of thinking of yourself in negative ways, think of yourself in a positive way. This is very important. Perspective in life is very key. Going through life up until pretty much last year, I had a very warped perspective of both my life and my place within the world. I had a very pessimistic and very negative view of myself. That doesn't mean I'm Mr., like, the glass is half full, man, everything's great. But it's where I'm a lot happier for not just comparing myself to everything and everyone and finding myself inferior in some way. The fact is, ladies and gentlemen, just because someone else does better than you doesn't mean you're doing worse than they are. And then you have to ask yourself the question, by what metric are they doing better? Are they happier? Are they more successful by some other random metric? The fact is, you have to be more concerned about what you, the individual, are doing versus what someone else who you've never met, who you never even want to meet, is doing. What they do in their life is utterly irrelevant to what you're doing in your life. You have to stop looking from without and start looking from within. It all sounds like a bunch of hippy-dippy crap, but trust me, once you actually understand what that means, you'll feel a lot better. Now, that won't change much of anything, because, once again, I don't have any easy answers for life. Life is difficult. It's very hard to make it 31 years. But, making it easier is kind of like my goal. Trying to explain things that took me years and years to figure out. If I can just reach one person, I'm happy, because, you don't want to spend decades, just thinking that things are one way when they're really not. I'm not even talking about blue pilling versus red pilling. I'm just talking about everyday existence. Politics is important, but just being able to get up in the morning and feel like you're accomplishing something, feeling like what you're doing has value. And the thing is, everyone's life does have value. I don't see Elon Musk as having more value than me. Just because someone has more money and is by some metrics more successful, is that really relevant? Who makes the rules on who's more relevant than someone else? It's just one of those things. If you go through your life, comparing yourself to what society thinks is successful, that's when you're going to have a lot of problems. I did that, and let me put it this way. Not only did it not help, it actually hindered me for many a year. Life is tough, but if you go through it with at least a non-pessimistic, I'm not saying positive, I'm saying non-pessimistic mindset, it'll make things a lot easier. And so, with all that hippy-dippy garbage out of the way, let's talk about some updates, ladies and gentlemen. And what we got today is, we got a review coming out next week as of this recording. We're going to be getting a review out of Fear, First Encounter Assault Recon. I'll be perfectly honest, every time I try to ever make a schedule, I end up not sticking to it. And it's not like I even just decide to not stick to a schedule. I just end up not doing it for some reason. Something always comes up, and that's why in the future, I'm not even going to bother making a schedule. I'm just going to do whatever comes to mind. Because I did not plan to do Fear this month, but you know what? It ended up happening that I wanted to do Fear and did it. For those who don't remember what Fear is, it's a 2005 game where you go around a building shooting clone troopers. It's absolutely amazing. The review is going to be very long. It's another mega review because that is one of my favorite games of all time. I actually introduce in that review the concept of Alpha Prime. The Alpha Prime concept is where it's a work of media wherein you play it, watch it, read it, whatever, many, many times. And every time you do it, you love it as much as you did the first time. And that's what Fear is. The firearms I held up, yeah, they're used as props, as often happens. Speaking of at least one of those firearms, the M1 Garand is going to get a second shot very soon, where I'm going to try to tighten up the groups on that bloody thing. Let's see what else we got. The live streams are going to continue apiece. We've got Halo Lemuria. I'm probably going to finish that before I finish Hellbound 13 and Doom Eternal, just because I've been kind of in a Halo mood. I mean, the Master Chief Collection is in full swing. I haven't picked it up yet, just because, well, I've got the games on the 360 and don't really have too much desire to play them right now, simply because I've already played them so many times, and, well, Halo 1 at least is an Alpha Prime game, whereas the other ones just aren't quite as good. I'll tell you this about Halo. I've mentioned this time and time again in streams and these update vlogs. After Halo 1, they just weren't that great. And I was kind of confirmed that by watching a few cutscenes for Halo 3. You know, it's just the writing became substantially shittier. I mean, you got that one scene where Miranda Keyes I got a problem with anyway. Not because she's the female, although we'll get to some Sojas in a moment, but simply because her writing is so crap. I have no idea. Like, you had Captain Keyes, and he sounded intelligent. Miranda Keyes is constantly spouting off action movie garbage that really doesn't fit with the overall tone of Halo. Like, one scene, it's like, get ready to move. And it's like, and somebody asks, like, well, where are we going? And she turns around all dramatically, to war. Ma'am, where exactly is to war? Like, I need some coordinates here, because people need to know where to fly and drive and march. To war. But can I get a grid? To war. Just one reference to war. It's like, it's terrible. But let's see. Sojas, ladies and gentlemen. AVP is apparently racist. I actually read some articles on that. Oh man, it's painful. I can't repeat what it is because I'm sure the YouTube channel will be taken down if I say it. But man, that's just like the xenomorph is racist. I thought it was just going to be the Predator because of the dreads, but no, Xeno is racist apparently. I don't know how people get these things. But then Orcs was racist. It's actually kind of interesting. If you look at the Sojust, for those who don't know what Sojust, that's social justice. If you look at the Sojust websites talking about D&D, it's actually kind of interesting. They all have a racial angle, but not necessarily the one you would think. It's not so much that the Orcs are racist, but it's the people who play D&D are racist. Because you've got the straight white male playing it. It's pretty painful. I mean, the sheer number of outright lies that people say about this stuff just really fills me with righteous fury. I can't even make the joke of righteous fury. Just legitimately it angers me because in my experience, in the tabletop gaming community, by which I mean I've been to a grand total of 3 game stores and talked to the people there, there's no, racism going on at all. The only one who's the racist seems to be the Sojust people. In fact, D&D. D&D seems to be the great... it's something that can reach across just about any grouping you can think of. I've seen I've actually sat in on a number of D&D games that, there's just people of all walks of life there, and it's quite aggravating to see, people just say, it's like, oh, the straight white males are so evil, how dare they even exist? It's pretty painful. Moving on from... There's actually something I was going to talk about, and I can't think of it at the moment. I always hate that. I am quite tired these days, because that coronavirus has ensured that my industry is constantly overworked, meaning my fatigue level is very high. Oh, what was it? Was it something so just... No matter, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wait, almost had it. I got it. Star Trek Lower Decks. I had no intention of reviewing the show, and I still don't, because I watched the second episode, and it was so painful, I just couldn't continue. Because you do have some of the belittling of, the straight white male character, Boimler, but it really is more than that. What I find interesting is, I like to watch reviews of these things, even if I kind of have my own opinion on them myself, and they kind of miss some of the details. Episode 3 launched as of this recording. I have not forced myself to see it, but I did watch the trailer for it, and the trailer itself seems pretty much like self-parody. And like, you got a scene from the show, and it's so bad, and then crash to title screen. It looks like that was a fan edit, but it's actually the legitimate trailer. It is just, when I say it's so bad, like, even if it wasn't Star Trek, it would still be bad, because the jokes never land, because I don't really know if they're trying to be funny half the time. The third episode, is sort of a parody, I think, of how in TNG they would do a lot of cultural stuff, like Shakespeare and the Three Musketeers and stuff like that, where they took that seriously. Or like Data would be playing the violin. Well, the character of Boimler does play the violin in that episode. They're violining about. And he's violining about doing a little river dance kind of thing. And it's shown as like being really boring to the crowd, except there is one guy that claps, and I think it's a Vulcan that does it. So I guess that it's supposed to be that he does it so poorly, but it doesn't really land as funny, because in a few moments later, you've got Ensign, whatever the hell her name is, she jumps in, and she starts playing metal, and everyone else still thinks it's boring and stupid, and it just comes off as something that it's supposed to be bad on purpose. The plot of the episode is to tear down the Commander Awesome McCool guy and show that he doesn't really know what he's doing, and also tears down Ensign, whatever the hell her name is. It also shows, it's like, I'm not really sure what they're trying to parody is the thing. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The writing is just so bad. I really can't stress how bad that writing is. It's the same way with Star Trek Picard. I've actually started watching a number of just clips from the episodes, and not only is the camera work really bad in Star Trek Picard, but when you compare Star Trek Picard to TNG, Star Trek Picard looks like a poorly produced fan film, complete with poorly produced fan film writing and acting. It's really kind of interesting how they do that. Now, fan film acting is generally bad at best, but you can tell they at least care. There's a fan film called Star Trek Horizon, I want to say, set in the 22nd century, and the acting it's not terrible, but it's not that great. But you can at least tell they care. In Star Trek Picard, the acting it feels like they're trying to act only like they're in a trailer. It's the dramatic statements. And like the timeline is all off in Star Trek Picard. They're less advanced than they're supposed to be. It looks like they are at most early 22nd century. We're talking pre-Enterprise here. And it's just, man, it's really sad. It's just sad what's happened to Star Trek. Star Wars, I gotta say, and I think this is gonna be kind of conscientious, I gotta say, maybe it got off kind of light compared to poor Star Trek, because at least the original cast died off in that show and weren't just completely, utterly eradicated like what they did with Captain Picard. Not only that, but at least Luke got a little bit of redemption in Rise of Skywalker, a little bit, because he said he was wrong instead of like trying to as they say, double down today. So I don't know, maybe both got it bad. I don't know. I think Doctor Who got it the worst, though. I'm not even a Doctor Who fan. Hearing about how they made the Doctor's origin so just is just sad. I mean, Picard, at least they didn't make his origin bad. At least they haven't destroyed Kirk yet. If you want some good Star Trek, I highly recommend the novels set in the Star Trek EU. Now, originally there wasn't a Star Trek EU. It was just a bunch of random novels. But the novel series is called Star Trek New Frontier by Peter David. That novel series right there is everything you want from comedy Trek, because it's funny and serious and still Trek. Peter David is a hilarious writer. He is by far the best Star Trek writer of all time. Every book he wrote in the Star Trek universe is nothing short of great. I gotta stop saying exceptional, because I say that way too much. They're all really good. They're actually funny. He actually pays attention to the continuity and uses logic, which is something that Star Trek doesn't use much. He actually remembers that the transporter is a thing. He actually remembers that of all the things that the Federation can actually do. It's great. The main character is Captain Calhoun, Mackenzie of Calhoun. He is a alien freedom fighter that helped free his world at age 19. It's really kind of neat how he works. He's basically, imagine Kirk crossed with Han Solo. That's pretty much his character. It is quite refreshing, to say the least. There's a number of TNG characters that were one-shots that show up in Star Trek New Frontier, Star Trek Discovery. Oh, God. Let's hope no TNG characters show up in that. Star Trek New Frontier, you've got Robin Leffler, who showed up a lot, I think, in late TNG, and Elizabeth Shelby, who was a major character in the Best of Both Worlds two-parter. She's also a major character. There's a couple others. Oh, yeah, so not Solita. Solita's a different character. Dr. Solar shows up as well. Dr. Solar has a really sad backstory, though. Shortly before she joins the New Frontier crew, in the middle of Ponfar, her mate dies while Ponfaring. Now, that's got to be one of the most embarrassing deaths of all time. I guess Solita was that... Not Solita. I guess Solar was that good. There is a Vulcan character named Solita who also is pretty bloody cool as well, because she's one of those characters, Solita that is, that she's the Vulcan character everybody wants to read about because it's a Vulcan character that, is kind of entertaining. It's one of those half Vulcan, half Romulan characters, so you got the cool, deadpan, dispassionate Vulcan mixed with some actual emotionalism. She actually also has a pretty cool backstory as well, even if it is ripped off from Savick, but whatever. The book series is not woke, but it is definitely more Star Trek, by which I mean it basically bridges some gaps and, tries some new things. So the chief engineer of the Excalibur, which is the main starship for the book series, is a transgender alien. And this is a book series from the 90s. So she's treated as a regular character, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. Because if that character was done today, they would tear down every, character they could to make that character look good. And the thing is, that the character itself looks good. Burgoyne 234 is the name of the character. Member of the Hermat species. And, well, that's a transgender alien. Now, that character is built up by having that character earn their way. They actually complete a number of plot-related things, plot-related goals and things of that nature. That character meets up. There goes the phone. That character meets up with Scotty. For those who don't know, Scotty ends up in the 24th century. And Scotty drinks her under the table. Or he, she. The novel uses some interesting pronouns. Oh, God, not pronouns. The pronoun used in the book is she. There's actually a joke in the book where originally it was going to be shit. And then all the Hermats were like, wait, why is everybody laughing at us? But whatever. It's really kind of neat, where Scotty drinks her under the table, and if this was done today, Scotty would be drunk under the table. But by having her go up against Scotty, you've got something to compare to. And it's like, well, nobody's going to beat Scotty, but, that character came close. And so that's just one of the cool things. That character is built up without tearing anyone down. That's the biggest problem with media today. Everything has to be torn down to build something up, and that just doesn't work. That alienates everyone. Let's see. We also got another character in there that's important. Actually, that character's not that important. There's another character named Mark McHenry, which isn't a bad character. Although he's one of those super characters that you didn't really see in the show that can basically do like high-level quantum dynamics in his head. Still, though, it's a very well-rounded crew. There's a lot of humorous situations and things of that nature. Oh yeah, that's the one. There's a Mugato. For those who don't know what that is, that's from the original series. A Mugato is basically a Bigfoot. And that character is written hilariously and is actually an intelligent Mugato that actually is a member of Starfleet. It's just, there's so much humor in it that it's just, that's what I would have liked to have seen on the small screen. That would make for a great TV show, but I don't think it can ever happen. One other thing I want to complain about as well when it comes to Star Trek is I read a number of articles saying that classic Trek couldn't be done today because TV has moved on from the episodic format. Basically, I cannot stress this enough. Orville did it, and people loved it. So that is a complete lie. Star Trek in the episodic format would probably work better today than it did back in the day. Because not everybody wants to follow the same, major plot line. Having some little irreverent episodes is not a bad thing. So yeah, that's my traditional Star Trek rant out of the way. 2020 will get better, ladies and gentlemen. All we got to do is just keep slogging through. And so, I'm GeneralLotz, wishing you good Star Trek, New Frontier, and good M1 Garand, whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you this great content.